Okay, we're going to cover a little bit about valence electrons. What we need to understand about valence electrons is that they are the electrons that are on the outer layer of our atoms. So for example, we would have inside our atom, we would have our neutrons and our protons. And so when you draw an atom, you would have, let's just do, if I can get my pen to work here, we'll do pluses for our protons. Okay, so if we have 4 protons, and let's say we have, I don't know why this keeps doing that, if we have 3 neutrons for dots, and then if we have 4 protons in the middle, we would need 4 electrons around the outside. So our outer shell, or the outside layer where these electrons are, would be the valence shell. So let's talk about, I don't know, let's do oxygen. Okay, so we need 6 electrons. So we would have 2 electrons in one shell here, and then we would have 6 electrons in the next shell. These electrons here in the outer shell are the valence electrons. We would then have 6 protons in the center, and we would also have 6 neutrons in the center. Okay. So these electrons out here are the outer shell electrons, or the valence electrons. So if we look at our periodic table, and the way it's set up is, if we are in group 1, there is 1 electron in that outer shell. So everything that's in this group, has 1 valence shell electron. When we get to the second group, no matter where we're at, the outside shell is going to have 2 electrons. And there could be 100 in here in different shells, but the outside shell is going to have 2. When we get to group 13 over here, there's 3 valence electrons. Then there's 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All except for helium. Helium's kind of an exception to the rule. Okay, it only has 2. So let's look at neon. If we have neon, we would have 2 electrons in its first shell, and then we would have 6 electrons here. 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we would have 2 more, 7, 8 electrons in that outer shell. Now when we get to argon, we would build it the same way. There'd be 8, and then we'd have another shell. When we get to argon, that would have 8 more. 5, 6, 7, 8, and so now this outer shell has 8 electrons. So no matter where we end up over here, this outer shell is always going to have 8 electrons. So you can use the periodic table to predict how many valence shell electrons we have by just looking at the group number. Group number 1 has 1, group number 2 has 2, group number 13 has 3, group number 14 has 4, group number 15 has 5, etc. all the way across. So if I ask you how many valence electrons something has, you should be able to look at the group number and tell me how many. The transition elements here in the middle typically have 1 or 2 valence electrons. And you know, right now I'm not going to worry too much about you guys knowing those. These are kind of exceptions to the rule. I want you to know groups 1 and 2, and then 13 through 18, and be able to tell me how many valence electrons each one of those groups has.